for coming this evening. So you should have received 2 documents from me in advance, one on community facilities and the other on infrastructure. I'd like to start with the community facilities. So essentially based on our last couple of meetings and discussions, and our decision to move forward with a survey related to community facilities, I drafted a draft survey and essentially sent it to you with, the instructions if you can take a look at it, think about it, and ultimately provide recommendations. At the end of the day, as I always say, you guys know your community better than I ever will, and you guys can help inform me on what's most important. So if you think I've missed a question or should ask something differently, this is your opportunity to provide feedback to me on that. And let me, I'm gonna share ultimately my screen and documents. And I guess if we want to start at the beginning and just slowly make our way through, you guys can provide input as you see fit. And I guess I'll get the ball rolling with, I'll just throw it out to Karen if she has anything to add or say.
Excuse me just for 1 second, Karen. Don, could you blow up the screen a little bit? It's pretty small on my screen.
Oh,
maybe if you could do 1 page or just
yeah,
increase the size of one of them. Thanks.
Yeah. That should be better, Lori, I hope.
Yep.
So, just having some fun with you, Karen.
Definitely better for me.
Well, I did make some notes, but you haven't gotten to them yet.
Oh, okay. So anyone on these early questions, I guess I should have put numbers on the questions. I didn't want to number them at this point, assuming I wasn't set with an order. But I guess that first question, how important is the quality of appearance and functionality of Enfield's community facilities? Anyone with comments?
Should we separate the actual physical buildings from, say, the parks? When we're asking these questions?
We could. I'm just going to make notes here. I will typo, error, misspell, and they'll be ugly. Just accept that because that's me taking notes. So,
Don, I also started the transcription, so that might help you at the end.
Great. I forgot what it was. There was something I was doing, and I actually went back because do you have the transcriptions online, or is it? Maybe it was someplace else. I use transcriptions.
No, we don't post them because the ETV is on, so we just post the recording from ETV.
I use
but
them.
I can send them to you.
Okay.
Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Cool. It's great to have them though. So.
Are we including the schools in this survey also? Because it's not clear from that first sentence whether schools are included.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
Might be worth defining what municipal buildings mean, right? Each type of building or park, or so that way people can associate that with the questions as you've asked them.
Yep.
Just generally speaking, it might be worth kind of looking at a different way to ask the question entirely. So, because it's a little bit complex of a sentence, so it might be easier in survey speak to say rate how important the following are to you on the following scale, and then you can pose each of the elements that you're wishing to sample.
Yeah, like you did back on the like page on the the fourth. Let's see, like you did with the parks. Yeah, how important are the parks to you and your family, and And then you list all the different things, kind of like what you did with park and recreation facilities.
Yeah, I think my survey writing skills got better as I went through the document. So, but yeah, no, I was thinking of that as Bill was saying it. So,
Yeah.
You know, and number two, it could, you know, overall, what is your current opinion of the condition of Enfield's municipal structures or buildings or what have you?
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe number three is three different things. Are they doing a good job maintaining the public buildings, the community facilities, and open space, right, Bill? We know what the roadsides look like. With all the vines and invasives that we see all the time.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
I know, but it doesn't mean we have to, they have to be.
No,
I put up with them.
I have them on my property at Maine, and it's just such an effort to keep them at bay. So, okay. Community center. So I asked this question intentionally before, and I asked this question here intentionally, and before we get to the questions related to the annex facility, because I didn't want to tie it to that line of questions. So that's why it's just kind of placed out here. Ask the question, see how they answer, and then ultimately, you know, see how their answers relate to the annex itself. So. Nothing on any of these as I move. Hopefully on the big question here, you know, I kind of went through my notes from interviewing different departments, and I looked online, and I tried to come up with kind of what I felt were your parks and rec facilities, but I ended it with question marks because I'm confident I had to have missed something, and I'm not sure if you guys had a dog park. They're just always on my mind. So
We do, but it's on one side of town that's difficult to get to. I
Okay.
was thinking boat launches.
Yeah.
I was
what-
thinking bike paths or bike trails.
Yeah, and do we want to differentiate between indoor basketball courts and outdoor basketball courts?
Yeah.
I don't know
No.
if that matters.
No, you know, it's funny with that crossed my mind as I was writing it. So I think it does matter.
Playground / playscape.
Let's add the bike paths, please, because that's going to be coming up.
Yep.
Lori, you said boat launches plural. I'm aware of your boat launch down on the southern portion of the Connecticut
Yeah.
River. Is there another boat launch I'm not aware of?
There actually is two. There's
Uh,
one right in Thompsonville, and then there's one off of Parsons Road down by the sewer plant. It's way down south.
Right, that was the one I was aware of.
And
There's
I
actually one right in Thompsonville in the TOD.
right where Freshwater Brook comes out to the Connecticut.
Off of South River.
That's
Okay.
actually a town one. The other one's a state one.
Hello,
Okay.
sorry everybody. Had a client emergency.
What was that?
Had a client emergency. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh,
No problem.
And we have talked
joining.
about, Don, we have talked about, the potential development of Scantic River access points as well. But that's still boat launches.
So that southern boat launch on the Connecticut River, that is a state boat launch?
Yes,
I believe so, yes.
I
Yeah.
think it is. Yeah.
correct.
Actually, it's owned by Eversource.
Okay. That's
And we're
fascinating. So, okay, that is so helpful because I always thought it was it was the town's, and I felt the town was kind of neglecting it and ignoring it. But now this makes perfect sense. If it's not yours, of course you're gonna neglect and ignore it. So, thank you.
And there actually is a little path to the south of that. It's, I don't know, maybe a quarter mile, if that. And I'm actually going to be seeking a small grant from Eversource to update the path because it's never going to be handicapped accessible, but it could be improved.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
There's been talk of oh shoot, what's the frisbee golf, developing a frisbee golf course on
Disc golf.
on town lands. Disc golf, thank you.
We actually were approached by somebody, I want to say a year and a half ago, and they wanted to develop one, but they never really gave us any good detailed plans, and it just dropped by the wayside. Maybe with
Yeah,
COVID, it just dropped.
Really, it all depends on what land is available.
What about zip lines?
I'm not sure I'm aware of a municipal zip line. Not saying you
But they're a
shouldn't
lot of
do
fun.
it. Not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not deterring from it. That would definitely be a first, though.
Maybe we put one over Lafayette Park because it's almost too wet to walk.
Connecticut water spot.
In the ball fields, I was just wondering, do you guys have lacrosse?
I don't.
We
think
do not.
so.
That was what to add. I know we do have a cricket league that was playing on a couple fields for a while.
There's no lacrosse in Enfield yet.
Is lacrosse a big thing in Connecticut? I know where I grew up in New York, it was
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, it is, Lori. In a lot of towns, it is around, certainly surrounding us. It is in Summers, in Long Meadow, East Long
Okay.
Meadow,
Yeah.
Simsbury,
Yeah.
South Windsor.
Yeah,
We're circled with it.
it's
So we're the ones
it's
that are
grown a
lacking.
lot. So that's why 15 years ago I never would have asked a lacrosse question, but
I think there's an E on
You
there.
probably- You wouldn't have asked about pickleball either.
no, a year ago I wouldn't have asked about pickleball.
Sounds like a
And
drinking
that will
game.
be the most the most important one down there.
So have the handball courts gone by the wayside? Nobody does that anymore?
I don't know.
Because I think Fermi still got one. Is that area still a handball
Yeah, it is.
area?
Well, let's
Not
put
that
it down,
everybody
see what the survey says. Maybe that's
Yeah.
something we can get rid of over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
There
a
you
good
go.
point.
It ends up just being tennis practice spot, Actually, they turned the one in Nathan Hale, they made it part of the skate park.
Oh, there you go. There's
Oh.
another one. Skate park.
Skate park.
I'm surprised I missed that one on my own.
I think,
Cool. All right. So, did I miss any parks here?
Hazardville Center.
Yeah,
One by Nathan Hale.
Nathan Hale. Yep. Or what do we, I think, is that called Green Manor Park?
It was when I was a kid.
Yeah, it was. Anyways, yes.
I believe so.
And would you consider would you put the public gardening plots into this mix?
the
But
community gardens.
They're actually on some of those parks.
I know,
So they're in
yeah.
Green Manor, they're in Lafayette.
but in the previous question, would you call that out as a
Park and Rec.
recreational feature?
Right,
Park and Rec.
Community gardening?
sure.
Yeah, I think we have the community garden beds right behind the library.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 spots,
Bye.
3 or 4
Oh.
maybe now. There's 4, I think now.
Apologies if you already said it, but did you have the playscape stuff like behind the library? Or is that too detailed?
We added playscapes in, not specifically with the library.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I don't think you need to highlight specifics. Thank you.
Should we include the town green as a park?
Sure.
Well, it certainly is, so I don't see why not.
Should that be
Put that-
ye old town green?
I actually saw 2 kids playing on the basketball court today. It's the first kids I've seen there since they put the nets up.
We're coming up on March Madness, that's why.
So under the Park and Recs question there and facilities, did we put playground? I didn't, did you add
Yeah.
playground to
We
that?
had a playground / playscape.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't see it, so, okay. Okay, yep.
Right there. Pay attention, Karen, come on.
Sometimes- I'm getting old,
You might want to add, in terms of the parks, you might want to add elementary school parks or playgrounds, just because they all have, many of them have playscapes. School facility. There you go.
school
parks.
playgrounds, yeah.
Does this include dog parks?
We
So
included,
there's
Yeah,
that
but
dog
it's in
park
there.
on okay, on Town Farm Road. I was gonna say that. Okay.
is the dog park municipal, Lori?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what?
The dog park's
It's run-
municipal. It's town owned.
It's run by,
It's town owned.
is it town owned or is it?
it's town, well, I mean, it's
Just-
town land, but
It's
it's
town land, I think it's
administered independently.
Okay,
correct.
Okay, so
I would add it at Enfield Dog Park, because that would be it's a good one to know.
Is that what the dog park is called at the transfer station? The Enfield
Yes.
Dog Park?
It's at the landfill.
Right.
Yeah.
So my question is, I mean, we're adding all these things. Are they supposed to be responding to, it would be important to keep or important to add these items? And I'm not sure if we need to make a difference.
yeah, I was thinking. I think that's good.
Maybe,
Go ahead, sorry.
yep, that's good. That works.
I'm just looking at my, this this question could actually be asked in two ways.
Mhm.
How important are these facilities to you and your household? Could also ask the question, have you visited these facilities in the last 12 months? And
Or the
provide the
question is,
same.
are they enough? Or too much?
That's a good point.
Or in the right place?
I mean, yeah, and some of the facilities don't actually exist. Like the disc golf, that doesn't exist. They do have some splash pads now. I don't think there's an outdoor, there's no longer an outdoor swimming pool.
Correct.
Well, do we have any marketing data as far as who uses them and how many people use it and how valuable to the neighborhood? And if it wasn't there, what impact would it have? Or if we moved it? I don't know. Kind of coming in late, so I apologize.
No, those are all good questions.
Are you
I'll think of-
are you accepting text answers in this survey?
There's always the opportunity to put in an open-ended question. So, you know, I have one here that will have a write-in block. If you have an idea for one, if you want me to do one specific to parks and park facilities, we can do one.
I think it might be worthwhile getting text answers on people's feedback about existing facilities and those that they want to advocate for.
Yeah, nobody wants to give up anything, right? You want to kind of hold on to as much as we can, as long as we can. That's kind of human nature.
Yeah, how do you determine if one person answers, does that mean 100 would have wanted it?
Right.
Hey, how many
Yeah,
people are on this committee? I mean, does that represent 50,000 people in the town?
Right. I think Brainerd Park is with an E though. I think we've had that or others have had that discussion for
Forever.
umpteen times, right?
You can kick me off, Karen, anytime.
You know, at the end of the day, this is to inform us. So, you know, if we only got one response, no, it doesn't carry the day, but it does just provide another, you know, piece of information. So,
yeah.
So
Can you can take, you've got dog park up above. You can take Enfield Dog Park off of that one up above and replace it Enfield Dog Park down below where you list the specific facilities.
I didn't know I had dog park in two places.
You don't, but if you want to take a pulse on how often people are using it, we should add it to the list of parks.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Leave it generic up above and specify it down below.
Dumb question. Do you charge a membership for the dog park like some towns do just to help maintain it outside of the tax base?
I think they do their own fundraising, and I believe all you need to do is pledge not to leave a mess.
What about the dogs?
Yeah, the dogs can do what they need to do. Yeah, they do about 4 or 5 fundraisers a year.
Okay.
Basically to purchase mulch and keep water fresh and so forth.
Bags and stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
It's a lease arrangement with or actually it might be a license arrangement with the town.
Interesting.
Are there any more like that are licensing arrangements with the town? Skate parks or whatever?
It's been something common with dog parks. At the end of the day, you know, my experience with dog parks is they typically originate out of residents, not out of the town. And I think there's been a hesitancy on town government side to lead the charge. Towns have been willing to offer up land, but not
That's
the
specific.
added, oversight and maintenance. And therefore, I think, they either end up on private land or public land, and then they're typically managed by a friends of group, so.
Well, there's a friend.
You might want to add the word "the" into the question. How often do you use the library?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm famous for dropping 2 and 3 letter words.
And would you want to
Right
say pre-pandemic in that particular question?
And what age group, really? I mean, because the library seems to be attracting a different age group than it was when I was growing up. Its purpose has kind of changed. Still important.
What type of dog was that? Sorry.
Springer Spaniel.
And I have 4 of them playing at my feet right now. I have my own dog park going on.
I'm separated from my 3. So, do you hunt with her or him, the Springer?
No. He tries, but we pretty much stay civilized, if that's a position.
Yeah. I have a GSP, short-haired pointer. That's why I was asking.
Yeah. He wants to.
So just so you're aware, and I'm not sure if you are or not, Donald, we do have 2 libraries.
Yeah.
We have one in Thompsonville, and then one main one over in off of Middle Road.
Yeah. And
they've added a lot of things there. We've got community gardens now. There's and then they've also added a lot of picnic tables.
Yeah, the main one, Lauren, is really nice, but the one in Thompsonville is almost like more of a museum. Wouldn't you say? I mean, it's kind of and not in a bad way. I mean, it's kind of
it's
a
very
historical
cute.
society is there.
Well,
and
That's a Carnegie library. And one of the problems with the Thompsonville Library down there is the fact that the lack of parking. But that's a keepsake. That's been there for a long, long time in the town of Enfield, especially in the Thompsonville section.
Just the Pearl Street Library is right there at the.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Pearl Street Library just totally renovated and updated and restored, fully restored.
Yep, absolutely.
And has a fairly loyal following, pre-pandemic.
Is that called the Rotary Park behind the library, the central library?
Yeah.
Should we designate that as a separate area?
That's the Rotary Playground.
Is that what it's called? Okay.
Yeah.
Should I have that listed?
Yeah, you should. That's the town's biggest playscape.
And it's accessible. So it's specifically designed by the Rotary to be accessible playground.
Handicap, yeah.
My fingers just do not want to move tonight. Actually, I'm going to move the open-ended question, which I'll better phrase. I'm going to move it to the end of the park section.
Okay. A small comment, everybody. I gotta leave. But thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Nice to see you,
Thank you.
Graham.
See you
Bye,
tomorrow.
John.
See you tomorrow night.
Bye. Yep.
See you Thursday.
See you tomorrow night.
Yeah, okay.
I intentionally, just so the tension with the fire districts and the fact that they're not under the control of the town. I was very intentional in just calling them fire districts and not listing them out individually, because at the end of the day, we don't really have say over them individually. But I thought if we were talking about public safety, that we should at least include the fire districts, that they shouldn't be ignored. So.
With the push on social services being somewhat, maybe in the future, being responding with some kind of, everything that's gone on in the past year.
Yeah.
Would it be wise to include social services department in that public service, public safety type of situation or not?
I'm not sure the public is informed well enough to comment on that. That's my general feeling. And even like myself doing this kind of work, I'm not even sure I'm informed enough to comment on that. So I always, and it's not just related to that, Karen. I always I always try and pay attention that we try not to, when we ask questions, that we try not to assume an expertise or knowledge in the public that's needed to make a determination.
I would say the only
so.
point on that is, do we know what it is and how accessible it is? We don't have to make a comment on it, but I think to Karen's point, is it accessible, and do we know how to, what is it? What's the makeup? Because I think that's something that Enfield could probably embellish a bit, personally.
Okay.
I'm sure that if you talk to the director over there, Cindy she could probably come up with the whole survey herself. They have expanded a lot of programs under COVID and will be continuing to do so.
Yeah, I'm only speaking, Lauren, from being, in homes. This is, I'm going out of my league here, because we see a lot of people at home that need help, and some of them do reach out. Some of them just, I don't know, they're just not, they don't want to interrupt the program, or they don't know who to reach out to, and we have to kind of point them to Cindy's group. I think it's just an awareness issue.
I'll talk to her if there's a question that she feels, a question or two that could be asked. She did give me an extensive rundown on their pilot with the police and so forth. I took notes on it, but I kind of chalked it away into more of programming than actual facilities, even though it did play into the police station renovation that got shut down. But I'll touch base with her and see if there's something that can be
We'll
asked.
take it offline.
So.
John, the question below is, should it say, are there public safety facilities or services you wish the town offered? Question mark.
As I said, my fingers are not working. Okay, thanks.
I think on the next list, you might want to, I don't know how you're going to do this, but you might want to add the Elkhorn School to the next list, because that's where social services has now been relocated. I can't see page 5. You might have already added it, and I apologize if you have, but I know Elkhorn School is basically, or an Elkhorn building, whatever you want to call it now, is used by Board of Education and by town for IT on the 3rd floor, and now social services in the basement.
It's pretty wild over there.
Yeah, yes it is.
Nice.
Yeah, multi-purpose building now.
There's a park over there now too, right?
That's always been there, actually.
Well, they just put some basketball courts there or something. Yeah.
And community gardens.
So should
as-
that be in the list of parks also or not?
That's it.
See, the more we talk.
Actually, this just for history, when I was a young kid, that was a much bigger park, basketball courts, and we had a pool. It was an outdoor pool there at one
I
time.
remember the pool. Yeah.
Was it a wading pool? Like,
No, it was a swimming pool.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Karen,
Yes,
I
it
think
was.
we capture it with basketball courts. So,
Okay. I wasn't sure what else was there. That's all.
yeah.
I knew there used to be a pretty good sized park. And then when they renovated the school, they added parking and it took a lot of that stuff away, but I didn't know what's there.
Does everyone still, so what should we be calling that building? Is it still called the Alcorn School, or does it have another name?
I don't think we've addressed that yet.
I dropped it from the school list because I knew it wasn't doing school stuff anymore, and I knew it was more
The
office space.
Alcorn Municipal Complex. I don't know.
Everybody
over
is called
60 will know it
Alcorn.
as the Alcorn facility.
Alcorn
Yeah,
building,
I would say,
whatever, yeah,
I would say facility.
yeah.
Alcorn School. Yeah.
What was I doing?
Lou, wasn't there a pool off of Lincoln Street?
Yeah, the Lafayette Park, there's a pool too,
Lafayette.
also, remember the Dingle. We used to call that the Dingle, absolutely.
But that was
Yeah.
a very shallow thing, right? That was kind of just like a
Yeah,
splash.
that a 4-footer maybe, yeah. Yeah, there was 3 pools. There was the one at the Alcorn, there was the one down at the Dingle, and then there was one out in Green Manorville.
I think I captured all the schools. I don't think I've missed anything. And this
So
is where go ahead.
On your question, have you been to the town hall annex? It's kind of how recently, I mean, I vote there.
Okay.
So I could say regularly on that question.
That's 12 months.
Yeah, maybe how often instead of how have you been? How often have you been?
And for what purpose, Karen, too, because
Right.
it's a multi-purpose building.
Right.
And rather than just going there for storage, or you're there for a
Sports,
class, a meeting, yeah,
Adult
sport,
ed.
okay.
Auditorium.
right,
'Cause, I mean, there is a lot of resources there, and
right. A play, from the,
tennis courts.
right.
Opera House
Okay.
players.
I'll
And
craft-
Don,
I'll
I
craft-
think you did miss the school.
One second. Let me just get
Yeah.
caught up here. I'll craft a question about for what purpose. So what school do you think I missed?
I don't know what they're naming it. It's the small little school that's in between Enfield High School and Enfield Street School. It's for special programs.
That's the Eagle
I'm not even-
Academy.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't even remember the name. Thank you, Bill.
You're not including in the private schools like Montessori or the parochial
No.
schools?
Or the
No.
correct,
Enfield Eagle Academy.
Thank you.
what,
So quick question just related to, does everyone know the town hall annex is the town hall annex? Or
No.
should I be stating the former Fermi High building?
keep
Okay.
saying
Yeah.
that.
Yes,
Okay,
you should
okay.
reference both.
Okay, I threw it in there just in case and to remind me to ask the question, but I wanted to make sure. So,
I don't want him in this room.
Close the door.
Get out. Get out. Figure out.
Is being used adequately.
yeah.
I can see you thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I was reading it going, what the hell was I saying? So I couldn't find my way out of the sentence as quickly as you did. So
And maybe there's an open-ended question after that second annex question. You know, how would you like to see it utilized? How would you envision it being utilized?
I think that's a great question.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the next.
Yeah,
If
Right.
AspenTalk or any of the other educational programs in town needed space, I mean, that place is excellent for that. Yeah, so I don't know, it would be like Bay Path has satellites all over Long Meadow now, and does AspenTalk need more classroom space for a different
Some of
program?
these have, but some of these responses have been recently moved, right? Like it is the headquarters for recreation, is it not?
I thought the question
Yeah.
was, what else would you want to use it for?
The recreation department's been moved there.
Yeah, but maybe somebody strongly disagrees. Maybe they think it should be, or even building and grounds, maybe they feel that should be over at the Public Works garage.
yeah,
That's a good
so
point.
actually, let me just quickly provide a little context here. I believe the library task force from a number of years ago were charged with exploring, and then I intentionally did this. I believe it's the first 4 items here or the first 5 items here were the specific charge of that task force from that report. So that's why I'm aware that Enfield TV is there, and you know, I left it in there because I was kind of trying to capture what that initial charge was to start there. So for whatever reason, at the start of that process of determination was made, these are the things we're going to look into. And I think in some ways that's kind of a limiting way of going about something. But I wanted to maintain that integrity of those initial items and then follow up with other things. And these other things are comments that you guys made during our last meeting or even the one before. So is there anything else that we've missed? Oh, which was just said educational space, right?
Right, so using it now for adult education. And the other thing we didn't mention before, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is the police department's actually using part of the basement for training.
Yeah, I was wondering if, but I don't know whether it's politically correct. But you know, the proposed police regional training facility was turned down at referendum, but in actuality, it wasn't going to cost the town anything, I believe. I wonder if we should ask that question.
All right, you're going to be our cruise director. I'll be a Julie McCoy. Yeah, I was going to say that.
So, that's a good point, Lori, because that basically was almost pretty close to being just a pass-through referendum.
Yeah.
You know, just by our charter limitations, basically, you know, kind of cause that referendum to go through. That'd be interesting if they're going to propose it again.
So what's the question?
I would, if you could say regional police training space would be maybe covered. It would insinuate the referendum.
Yeah, but are we talking for Fermi or are we talking for a separate building?
Could you do it at Fermi?
Oh. I don't think they want to do it at Fermi.
Well, I was just yeah, I was thinking that we just might have a separate question regarding that, and I could talk to the town manager if this group thought it was in the best interest of the town.
What about the probate court? Being located at the annex?
I'm not sure if that's something we have a choice over.
Well, they're using space at the town hall. I mean, you could better utilize the space at the town hall if they were somewhere else.
Oh, you're
Well, they
speaking to
wanna
the
go
choir now.
someplace else.
I'm sorry, what, Marianne?
They want to go someplace else.
Right.
Right. So,
We're actually looking to see if they would be interested in going into the Hazardville Institute.
Yeah.
yeah, but that's been going on forever.
I don't think that's going to work because the way they have to have private conferences, I believe, for underage custody issues or whatever, I don't think that's going to work.
Do they even have enough parking?
I'm just saying that there's,
Right.
you know, it's, the inquiry is out there, I think. So.
Right, but I think we should ask the question here at the annex. I just think it's a better fit in the annex. They could take a whole section or something if they needed to. Plus, they need a big safe and everything for the documents, and I don't think the floor will support it all.
Don,
At the
I put district probate court.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe they can go over to the old court building if they're gonna close that up.
True.
That would be bad if they did.
Sure would. It's not open now.
I know. I don't understand why. We're open.
A lot of discussions going on about that. They're very well aware how much we want to keep that open.
Some of them in public, some of them in grand juries.
What about commercial office rental space? Because that was one of the things that came out of one of those studies they did.
Like an incubator kind of program?
Yeah, I don't know if that was the gist of it, but I remember hearing it. So they were talking about separating one whole section of Fermi, but with the maps that we got, I've only had limited knowledge of Fermi. You know, I've gone to the gym, to the auditorium, and that's about it. And if I was asked to go anywhere else, I got lost. So
how much is being utilized now versus its capacity?
Right. Well, that's what we got in one of those other emails. And I was trying to determine if because some of the rooms are missing off this map. And so I couldn't really determine how much was being used and what wasn't. So, and kind of the layout of the building, but anyway.
That document was great. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank Donald. He's the one I had to beg for.
It's fairly well utilized, occupied at the moment.
Yeah, it surprisingly is.
It's approaching at least 30%.
So for this list, when we first were talking about the annex, the idea was to use the building to be able to close down the elementary schools at the end of the school day, so that any activity that was happening at a school. So you've got listed community center or community meeting space, but the talk was to have some dedicated rooms for the users of the schools, like the PTOs. So it becomes their space, not a common meeting space, but it becomes their space. Lock and key.
So they don't meet at the school, they would meet at this facility instead. Okay.
Correct. And that was to get the janitors taking care of the school earlier in the day, close it down, secure it, be able to turn the heat down, and just focus all the activity at one building.
Makes sense.
So to that end, I mean, because the heavy use of the elementary schools is evening recreational programs, or before, we've always talked about, could you open up the swimming pool publicly during the day? Yeah, that's something we don't capture now. I don't know how you could call it a daytime and evening swimming pool access, but you could also say daytime and evening recreation space access.
How is that funded? Who maintains that, and where are the lifeguards? Where does that money come from?
Well, that comes from recreation budgets, and that lifeguards is availability of lifeguards is the reason why they don't do it now.
Yeah, it's not a good environment for sure.
But there's more than that, actually, because it's when you get into different types of pool use, you start talking about things like water temperature that's suitable for the swim team is not the same water temperature that you want for community use or adult
just
swim
safety programs, right?
Yeah, swim.
CPR and
swimming,
whatever.
Right, the swimming education is different than the swim team.
Right.
And there's about a 5 to 8 degree difference in the water, so there's a lot that goes into that.
I mean,
So
you
when-
also need lifeguards for a splash pad.
Do you really?
Yeah,
that-
because I used to be a lifeguard and a swim teacher before I came here to Enfield. And we had a splash pad, a recreational pool for swim lessons for kids, which was warmer, and then the competition pool. And you had a lifeguard for each pool.
Yeah, I would think somebody could drown in a cup of water, so that makes sense. When you were talking about nighttime recreation, do they still have volleyball at night? And would the volleyball be
There's
part of the facilities that we wanted to talk about back on page 2?
I mean, at the Fermi gym now, you have basketball, you have pickleball. In that building, you also have the town's recreational wrestling program. I mean, there's some pretty heavy use of some of those facilities.
Yeah, I'm not talking about just Fermi. I was talking about way back in the beginning when we listed all the indoor pool, outdoor pool, the pickleball, basketball, tennis courts. Should we include volleyball in there? I don't know.
Is there a volleyball court at Fermi?
Well, I mean, both high schools have the facilities, but there is not, for instance, there is not one that's outdoors.
Right. I
We
think
always-
it's just used certain nights of the week. They have adult volleyball or something. And like, I think when I played, it was at JFK on certain nights of the week or something. It wasn't a league or anything. It was just pickup games. Everybody would go and pick sides.
How you doing, B?
Okay, so last chance for comment, and then I'm moving on in the interest of time.
Good idea.
Those charges clear or get canceled?
So one question, the Lamagna Center, we're definitely getting rid of that. There's no question about that at all, right?
I believe it's empty.
So we don't need to include it in the list of buildings.
Isn't that part of the new redevelopment downtown anyway?
I
Is
think
it eliminated?
Yeah, the plans are to tear it down, Karen. I don't know when, but the plans are to keep on moving forward.
Okay.
All right. That one's gone. So, I wanted to start, because I've got to keep us moving along. I wanted to start a discussion basically about infrastructure and kind of the next chapter we'll be working on. That doesn't mean we're done with community facilities, but in the interest of keeping us moving. So I just kind of sketched together some thoughts here as kind of a rough outline of topics. And once again, if you think I'm missing something, please feel free to tell me to add something.
What about internet providers? Because I had a client call our office a couple weeks ago saying that like Xfinity and all these other providers would specifically not give him internet because of his location. So I don't know what happened, but
Yeah, I usually stay away from it just due to it's kind of out of the municipal control. They're regulated by the
5G is regulated by the town.
the town will have a degree of say, not in the 5G service, but in the locating of 5G antennas and other facilities. So there's kind of a difference there. It's kind of like cell towers. You don't have control over, whether it's Verizon or T-Mobile, but you do have a say in the siting of the facility. And the 5G is the same way. As 5G comes online, there's going to be a lot of installations of antennas and facilities for it.
You would just
So-
footnote it then as a something to keep an eye on?
Well, it's a topic I think for us to discuss because
I think it's a good point.
For what? I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you're talking about 5G or internet service.
I think both, and whatever, I mean, this is a 10-year plan. What's coming, 10 years from now?
Yep.
So the town of Enfield was approached probably 6 years ago now about pursuing vendors for gigabit internet service, and we were blocked from negotiating by state statute of all things around DPUC control of who we could provide services from. So it definitely is. It ought to be something we advocate for, the ability to negotiate with ISPs in particular.
Yeah,
but it's more of a legislative agenda than anything else.
So it's more of a footnote, something to be aware of and react to as much as we possibly can, if we can.
It's an advantage if we had it, and we ought to be demanding it.
What about solar panels? Would that fall under utility infrastructure?
Yeah, actually, it could.
Is that private or public?
Could be either.
So placement of solar arrays.
Yeah, so. There's been varying ways that communities have engaged in solar. So some towns have ventured into it on their own for their own facilities. Other towns have entered into agreement with private companies to provide land for the solar arrays, town land, and then with a purchase agreement and lease on the energy and so forth and so on. So there's multiple different ways that communities have engaged in it. So
what's the utility infrastructure and water? What exactly what are we getting at there? Because there's basically two water companies that have almost all the facilities in town with one little guy over in a corner. But
so actually, I'll be honest. So just before I jumped on this meeting, I added the stormwater MS4, and I believe when I was writing this up, I believe the water was supposed to be the stormwater one, because I know you guys don't have municipal water. So my point is, I think I left the water in there by accident. I don't think it was supposed to be anything.
Yeah, because we don't have the ability to say we want somebody else to give us water. Right. The state has already said these are the two water companies in town, and that's just about it.
Right.
How about use of their lands as a discussion point? However, the use of their protected lands is certainly up for discussion, I think.
Well, it's always offered to the town first if they're getting rid of it.
What kind of use are you thinking about there?
Passive.
I know that they're just, I mean, obviously they're concerned about their wellheads, so.
I mean, but
that's always-
they've opened up quite, I mean, they've entertained conversations more in the last 10 years than the previous 10.
Okay.
But when you start looking at not so much the water companies, but the was it Rocky River and properties that are controlled by Eversource entities, that's pretty significant stuff up and down the Connecticut River. In terms of public infrastructure, would you include commercial vehicle wayfinding? And we know we have excessive truck traffic into very specific neighborhoods in town.
GPS.
We've started conversations with state of Connecticut and between state of Connecticut and DPW about improving, way signage and so forth.
What do you mean by way signage?
Like, if you take everything around out by the prisons, the Lego properties, the Win Stanley properties, all the truck traffic that comes in and out of those, highly commercial areas, making sure, and the areas that are coming out of across the border in Long Meadow, working with the state and others to make sure that routes to and from the interstate are clearly identified, well lit, properly built to standards that support the traffic where we want it. But more importantly, what the town of, back when we were discussing this initially, the town of Windsor was explaining to us that there are truck routing services that they were working with and providing, GPS type of data to ensure that when a truck was coming, say from 84 and heading to, one of the Win Stanley complexes, for instance, that they would be directed to the routes that the town favored. So if we're gonna see the kind of intense distribution center development that Central Connecticut is ripe for right now, we ought to be taking steps to making sure that our roads are built to the standards we need them, lit to the standards we need them, and folks are being directed to and from those areas.
What is the intent of that Win Stanley facility across from the annex? Because you bring up a good point, Bill, because today I had to pick up something at Federal Express at South Windsor, and I went at like 8:30, and the traffic was absolutely incredible of trucks, all sizes, exiting to make deliveries. And it seemed to be well organized, but that part is, there's a lot of residential areas that it has to go through. So what's the vision, I guess? And forgive me if I haven't been involved in some of those meetings.
That facility by the Fermi Annex, that's a sole occupier with standard distribution intent. It's going to be the company that owns the Cabot cheese.
It's going to be Agrimark and
Agrimark.
Agrimark.
Yeah, so
is that the same Agrimark that's in Ellington?
But I'm talking about, the property up along the lake, the existing Manning Road buildings, the Lego property, the Advanced Auto, all of these entities have, significant truck traffic. And we know there are places in town where we want them to travel, and there are places we wish they didn't. And we fell short on really kind of demanding a partnership with the state to make sure that we've got adequate signage, proper lighting, and the like. Whether, and it could go, so I'm assuming it could go so far as, you know, should we name that area? Should it be the Shaker Industrial, you know, area or district? We really gotta make an effort to put our desires for where we want trucks to be or where we'll tolerate them, and get them off the routes that we don't want them on.
Well, just to give you an example, I'm on North Maple between Shaker and Moody, and I was heading to the town hall today, and I met Moody in North Maple, and there's a truck coming down Moody, going east on Moody, and he's turning north on North Maple to probably go over to that area over on Shaker Road. Why didn't he just keep on Shaker Road? Why did he come down Moody? That doesn't make
And
sense.
there's still a lot of farm
So-
area down there too, and
Right. So
And there's still a lot of industrially zoned property that, you know, it just behooves us to be making taking the steps now in this plan, while we've got, you know, very interested parties presenting development proposals to start building out the way signage and the and the road safety and the pedestrian safety infrastructure that we need.
yeah, we're kind of going off on a tangent because that brings us back to 120, the 220 and the 190 conversation.
And hey, Bill, I'm gonna leave the room while this conversation is still going on, and I'll come back when somebody else is over, please.
I'm done. And actually, Lou, in your position, I will share with you the PowerPoint deck that we sat down with members of CONDOT and DPW probably 6 years ago, because it might be useful to revisit some of that.
So,
and it's not specific to anything, Lou. So I you know,
look at it as a zone more than any particular parcel, Lou.
Right.
So, Bill,
think
I'm
you left.
I'm just struggling on some aspects of this here. From a I totally understand the concern. But from a wayfinding perspective, I mean, my assumption is you'd want vehicles on 220, not on Moody. But what I'm struggling with is, one, you as the town, I don't believe have control over signage along 220. So that's something you'd have to get the state to do in any of those state roads coming from the highway into 220. And then the other side of it is the inability for municipalities to prohibit trucks on local roads.
Yep.
You're challenging me here. I'm trying to find the role that the POCD can play in this.
Well, just as if they have signs that point to the motor vehicle department, you know, and to the police department on 220 and 190. I don't see why we couldn't say Shaker Industrial Area, you know.
Well, that's a buffer, but that we don't want to lose that buffer, because that kind of pushes it more towards the Mass border and the prison, and it keeps it out of the way a bit. If we bring it too close, we're just going to, I think, more congestion.
Yeah,
Don, we've all watched the growth of the Day Hill Road industrial area over the last 20 years. And the town, and this is from talking with their DPW director, you know, 10 years ago, it was a combined effort to make the kind of improvements that they eventually got along those state roads and the town roads. They upsized the sign requirements. They they required certain street signs to be erected when a new parcel was developed. Consider like the initial Amazon on Day Hill Road. they made a series of calculated improvements to make sure that the commercial traffic was directed where they wanted it and away from places they didn't want it. And
Okay.
the state was a willing partner in that. And I don't know if it was through CROG investment or direct from the state. But when, as it relates to POCD, the council and the zoning commission ought to be empowered to recognize the types of things that we need when certain parcels in this zone are going to be developed, and whether whether they're funded through the TIF or whether they're taken into consideration as requirements. That's up to the respective boards and commissions. But we need to list the things that are important infrastructure wise and proper direction to heavy commercial traffic.
Wayfinding might be a little bit hard too, because each truck, like each driver, they might use different apps. There's so many different types of navigation apps these days.
But the trucking industry uses very specific ones, is what we've been told.
So,
they're not playing around on
all
Waze.
kinds of stuff.
They're using things that are specific.
So just hear me out, Bill. One is, I guess if you could send me an email with a punch list of kind of what those things are, the wish list.
Yeah.
One, so I can get my head around that. Two is, though, I'm still really struggling with the role here. So if it's a town-owned road and it's signage related to that road, then I would assume your DPW could do whatever they so chose. If it's a state road, you're going to have to deal with the state.
Correct.
In the context of zoning, and this is where I'm struggling a bit, is that zoning doesn't actually have authority for off-site improvements. And the plan being a land use plan and zoning being zoning, I'm struggling with the role here. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just struggling how to work this in. And I'm not giving up on it. That's why I'm saying I think you need to send me a message with some details and let me think through it a bit. So.
Okay.
Don, I think that, somewhere in the POCD, we could probably put this as, some sort of a wish list and possible means of implementation. It just won't be a zoning commission task.
Yeah. And I think it's worthy of mention of at least, at the very least, the town should continue discussions with DOT about or whatever. So,
right.
I mean, if the legislative body is putting its priorities in front of CROG every so many years, this is one of those things that ought to be prioritized if we're going to, encourage the kind of intensive use on the roads that we have currently.
Hey, Bill, this is Lou, if I can, and if Scott's on, some of this traffic on some of the roads you're talking about, particularly 190 and 220, that's been brought up with CROG way back in my day.
Sure.
This has been ongoing for 25, almost 30 years, these conversations.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we get a nice end to them, but
certainly. Look at, I don't know, whoever's been down Hazard Avenue at the intersection of North Maple by the Institute this morning. The second time in 6 months, a truck has wiped out the crosswalk lamps, so there's definitely design considerations in our intersections and along our streets that are not conducive to the kinds of more intense truck traffic that we're seeing coming about. So I want to see it prioritized here only so that we can bring the emphasis through all the legislative bodies that we have. Because it's definitely a leftover item from the last decade.
Yeah, and if you're not a local truck, if you're not a local truck driver, you don't know that you can't turn left onto North Maple from Hazard Avenue without getting into the left lane and making a big curve. And the same with Moody Road, you know. My son drives, and when he comes down this direction, he goes shaker and he turns on North Maple, because that's a nice big intersection, and they know they can make that turn. But you know, the guys coming from out of state, they're not going to know that. And if we
I'm
don't
back
have,
at least once a week so I can give the truck more room to turn.
yeah,
I live in that
absolutely.
area. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
You're right
I
there.
think we've got to get the state, and that's got to be one of the goals in here. I think because it's only going to be, as we develop the town more and more, it's only going to get worse. So I think we've got to put it in there as a goal or something.
Okay, other priorities? Or other things I missed?
I think walkability is certainly something we need to be promoting everywhere.
And I think we definitely need some kind of shelters where the bus stations are now. I don't know how frequently the buses are being used, but I don't even know where the bus stops are necessarily. They're not really marked.
I'll
Because you don't take the bus.
Yeah.
I know I drive by where it
More
stops.
significant.
Karen, I don't take those buses, but I have had people reach out to me about how poorly, on which side of the street the shelters are, how they're in the middle of an area where you're standing in the mud. You're standing over a curb. They're not well placed. I'm like, who the hell came up with that idea?
They're people's driveways.
Yeah. I'm like, you know, if they're going to go and take the magic carpet bus and there's going to be a shelter there, the least we could do is put them in a place that makes the more sense. And I've actually put that in a C-click fix, and I haven't seen any fixing in my clicking. I'm there for you, Don.
Anyone else? I'm lost for words.
Where I don't know where this sits on anyone's priority list, but the municipal parking lots ought to be on somebody's radar for
maintenance.
A study on, well, I mean, we say they definitely need to be maintained, but what is the value of that land, and what is the development potential for lots that where buildings have come down and we've just made them lots? I don't know any municipality who just opens up lots at no cost to those that utilize them. And I mean, if we ever have a situation in our future where we're going to have a commuter rail stop, we really need to be thinking about lost revenue that's tied up in our existing residential parking infrastructure.
Doesn't it come down to supply and demand?
Can you give me sorry, go ahead.
Not just a supply and demand. Some of those lots are there just to kind of have a buffer. Others may have a demand, and to Bill's point, you can develop them. So I guess that's a sidebar unto itself, right?
Well,
but
I'm going to generalize, but it is a incredibly valuable commodity for the municipality to be offering free parking.
If there's a demand,
we ought to be at least recouping the lost development tax base. And if we've got a density problem, or we have a density situation we want to manage, I'm talking about primarily in the village. Maintaining open lots ought to be examined.
Do we have a municipal parking lot list? I don't think so.
Well, I mean,
And
there's,
Marie, and that's probably going to change too because of the development that's being planned and some of the things we're discussing. So one lot that might be really popular today may be
Yeah, but if
fallow
you know where
tomorrow.
your lots are and
Well,
like.
that's the place to start, of
about,
course.
But
And then you
maybe,
can make it, you can plan it, right?
well, not just, it's twofold that I'm hearing, Bill. First off, we know where our lots are, because I don't think any of us, we all know a couple, right? Then we can find out, are they buildable lots and be used for something else? Or is someday the multi-car garage gonna be built someplace, right? Because those are one of the things we've kicked around. If we don't have an idea of where our inventory, is, we can't make decisions about our plan.
well, I mean, Lou and some of the natives on the call know that there used to be an Enfield Parking Authority that managed that kind of stuff. And my suggestion is we ought to be putting that on the radar screen in the next 10 years, assuming that we have a commuter rail. And if we want to develop, more walkable communities, we ought to be counting our municipal space that's currently used as parking lots as one of those assets that ought to be monetized.
On board with that. We gotta know where they are.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not an advocate for getting rid of the lots, but certainly I think we probably need an up-to-date list of where they all are now at this point.
At least
we've accumulated at least certainly down at Townsville, a lot of these, lots that fit 8 cars and another one that fits 10 cars, another one that fits 6. There's been a lot of that since redevelopment occurred in the mid 70s. A lot of things were, turned into municipal parking lots. So it'd be nice. We got a list of lots. I don't know, maybe the town assessor or Donald at DPW can help us with that, but I think that's important that we get at least a list so we know what we're dealing with.
And it has to be full information, where it is, how big it is. We need to know.
Yeah, location and the amount of cars it can hold, absolutely.
Right.
I think you'll find that a lot of those lots get pretty filled up during the snowstorms when there's a parking ban. But other than that, I think they're only used for certain events, like over by the old Polish home, when there's something going on upstairs, those lots right near there get used. But
Karen, note that lot where the Polish home is, that's full all the time. People who live in the apartments fill that thing up. So it's pretty busy lot. Then again, back to Bill's thing, is that a parking lot for the residents, or is that a town municipal lot that we should be thinking about? I don't know.
Right. Who actually owns that lot? So that's why the inventory would be important, right?
Right.
Well, so some of that, there's 2 lots there. The one that's to the one that's further to the west is town owned. The one that's closest to the Polish home is owned by the church. The one that's further to the west is owned by Bigelow. The big one is owned by Bigelow.
But the one right at the intersection, isn't that the town one right there at the intersection?
No, that belongs to the church.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which church?
Faith, Hope, and Love.
It's right there in the corner.
Right there at the corner.
It's at the other end. The
No.
other. Okay. All right.
The inventory is important, and of course, there's parking meters that can help take care of the flow of how we use these lots, right?
Well, there's definitely residential parking considerations, and then there's, whatever we end up with in terms of, commercial use.
Remember, we like to park for free.
Correct.
Of course. Free's always good, right?
I will say that the parking lots in Thompsonville have been calculated as in the parking study for the train station.
Mhm.
So they do want, actually Amtrak wants more parking, public parking, not necessarily residential,
Yeah,
just for people for commuting. So
that makes sense.
it's just a consideration.
But that's a consideration when we start, the more we keep converting properties to multi-unit uses, we're putting pressure on those parking lots, and that's been a problem for years. If you're not going to require a limited, we keep talking TOD and limiting the number of vehicles per housing unit, yet we expect these few lots that we've got in Thompsonville to carry the load. And that's no longer the case. Even the ones that we have are nearing capacity. If you look at Pearl Street in particular, that lot near the barber shop is nearly always at capacity.
Lori, can you get your hands on that parking study pretty easily?
Yeah, we've got it.
Okay.
So if you want to, I mean, you know, it becomes part of this, I mean, we're going to go back, you know, a ways here, but if we're looking at the shopping and the commercial viability of the district, if your available parking spaces are being utilized by your residential units on the same block, you're never going to attract a commercial tenant to the same area if the available municipal parking is occupied.
Yeah.
And since we no longer charge car taxes in the district, you know,
We don't?
everything free in America.
Wait a minute. We don't charge car taxes in Thompsonville?
I don't believe so.
They get all the leased vehicles charged to Thompsonville. Any leased vehicle that because they can't determine where they are, they get credited to Thompsonville's district.
Wait a minute. Who's paying these taxes?
No.
Okay, I'll save it for our beer drinking night, Bill. You can explain that to me offline.
Any other priorities, Mr.?
While everybody's thinking about that, Don, we just did this a Survey Monkey for the traffic impact study that we're working with CROG around the Enfield Square.
Yep.
And they had the QR code for a link. We put it on the Magic buses. We put it everywhere. In 3 weeks, we've gotten over 1,000 people taking this visual preference survey.
Wow.
So maybe we could advertise it with the QR code when we do this.
Advertise this with the QR code. Okay.
Yeah. So I could talk to you about that offline, but we were shocked how many people actually took this visual preference survey, which wasn't exactly an easy thing to do because you had to do a little interpretation.
I'm actually just shocked because I mean my general experience is people don't pay attention to QR codes.
Well, apparently they're starting. I don't personally.
You're aging yourself, Don.
There was even that there was that Super Bowl commercial that was just a QR code floating around on the screen.
Yeah, and it crashed the computer.
And I was joking around with some other people, like we all realized what it was as the commercial ended, and no one actually like shot the code to launch to whatever site it was taking to. So it's just been, I mean, I find QR codes fascinating and they're great, but we haven't adapted to them very well. So.
Well,
anyway.
Somebody did.
Well, they said the next day that QR code computer, whatever it was attached to, crashed during the Super Bowl. So it did get plenty of attention that way.
Okay. So maybe it's just
But
me.
nobody knows what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch it, so, but
I
crazy.
I clicked on it. It was a Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a Bitcoin commercial.
Okay.
There you go.
And I'm glad I tuned it out. So,
All right, guys, I'm going to turn into a pumpkin.
okay. No, this is a good time to break.
Hey, Don, before we
My
break,
dinner just arrived.
I just had one quick question before we break, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Only because I keep getting asked.
Yeah.
Do we have a target completion date?
I'm hopeful we will have where are we? We are February, March, April. I'm hopeful for a draft plan late April, probably May. And then just with, I think running a public hearing through the summer is probably unrealistic, but I think targeting a public hearing for adoption for September is probably the most realistic right now. That could be sooner, but I just don't know if you want to run any public hearings in July or August. So.
And the other question I have for you, because coming on kind of late to this maybe a month or so ago, did you guys already talk about things on the nature of conservation? See, Karen? I don't know if Karen's still on. See, Karen, you like that plug? I mean, have you guys hit that part of the?
I'm glad that somebody's thinking of it again.
I always do, Karen.
We did early on, and so yes.
Just so you know, we feel it should be changed to the plan of development, period, because we never feel there's enough conservation in there.
Well, Karen, I'm on your side. I'm siding with you.
It originally was the plan of development, but the legislature added conservation to give it more attention.
Because it's a goal. It's a goal.
Well, I think I'll go back and try to find that section in the draft and I'll read through it. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's not much.
Well, maybe we can add a little more, Karen.
Yep.
I was just going to say the same thing. So.
Georgie's working on it for us. If she's still there.
I am. I'm just fighting my laptop with my cat. But yes, still working on it. Working on implementation strategies now with ag and con in wetlands.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, Don.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is really great.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Yep. And we'll see you. We'll see you next month. Bill, please click me that email.
See you tomorrow, Lori.
Yes, see you tomorrow.
The traffic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll dig it up. It was a little PowerPoint that we shared with. We sat down with DPW. I think I want to say they had somebody from ConDOT in the room.
Okay.
But it's not terribly more detailed than what I've expressed tonight. It's more, how do we prioritize?
Yep.
The simple idea that we want trucks. We know what development we've got. How do we formalize it into a place that we can then use within the GPS environments that these commercial trucking firms all leverage? And if looking at when the DPW director in Windsor was very cordial and kind of sharing their what it took for them to get those oversized directional signs and routing detail.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good to see y'all.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Night all. Thanks for coming and attending.
Thanks, Don.
Thank
Good
you.
night.